Hello everybody and welcome to this session on how to get the best out of the AIMCATs. All of you are aware that the CAT notification is out and that they have given us some information about how the CAT 17 pattern is going to be, and we now know that the exam is on 26th November. So I absolutely understand each one of you being very eager to know what is it that one needs to do between now and the 26th of November, so that one can get the best out of whatever we have on our hands and whatever we prepare. Now, this session is to basically kind of help you understand how is it that one can utilize the AIMCATs that we're going to take between now and the CAT exam, so that we get the best out of the AIMCATs that is possible, so that will help us put in the best on the CAT day. So before we jump into that, let me quickly brief you in terms of how the CAT pattern is going to be, just so that we build up towards the session that we're going to deal with over the next 40-45 minutes or so. Here, we know that this year there are going to be 3 sections. The first section is VARC for 60 minutes, and the second section is DALR for 60 minutes, and the third section is Quant for 60 minutes. So the sections are individually timed. Now, what does that mean, that the sections are individually timed? Now, essentially what this means is that we are not going to write one exam for 3 hours. This means that we are going to write 3 exams of 60 minutes each. So that one huge mental block, I think it'll help if we remove the mental block of a 3-hour exam, and we now need to start thinking that we are going to take 3 60-minute exams, right? Now, in addition to that, the information that has been given is more or less limited to this bit only. They have not specified the number of questions that are going to be there overall in the exam, and they also did not specify the individual section-wise number of questions that are going to be there. So this is some kind of a gray area that we need to deal with, and obviously AIMCATs will help you by exposing you to tests which have multiple overall number of questions and multiple variations also in terms of the number of questions per section that we're going to have. We know that within a question, within the available 60 minutes per section, one can move back and forth and look at any question within that section during the 60 minutes that is available for that particular section. And we can move to the next section only after the 60 minutes that have been allotted for this section are over. We can't obviously move to the next section before this. And this year also the on-screen calculator is going to be available, and the non-MCQs, which are the direct answer questions, also are going to be there this year. This is what we know about the CAT pattern. And let's also spend a couple of minutes on understanding the scoring part of it, because many students have many questions in terms of how is it that the normalization process, etc., would work. I'll try and spend a couple of minutes on that. Now, we know that every right answer has 3 marks, and every wrong answer the students are penalized with a negative mark. And the non-MCQ questions, which are direct answer questions, they don't have any negative marking, and it's given that the scores would be normalized across sections. Now, let's kind of take a pause for a moment here and understand what this normalization means. The normalization is done because the CAT is a multiple paper exam. There is more than one paper. As you know, the exam is conducted in 2 slots, the morning and the afternoon slots, to account for any possible differences in terms of the difficulty level across these two slots, so that all the students who took the CAT exam can be brought onto one scale. There is a process called normalization that is undertaken by the authorities. Now, this was actually a lot more complicated process when there were 40 slots in the exam. If you know, most of you would know that from 2009 to 13, the exam was conducted over a 20-25 day period across 40 slots. Now, from that, obviously, the complexity has now come down because it's only 2 slots, but still, because there is an additional paper that the students are going to take, there is a requirement that everybody has to be brought onto the same scale, and therefore this process of normalization, which is a statistical process, obviously, has to be undertaken. Now, in addition to normalizing the scores, what has been told is that the scores would be normalized across sections also. Now, why is this being done? It is being done, from our understanding, we understand that it is being done to prevent any particular section, either bad or good, from influencing the overall score drastically. For example, I'm very good on quant, and I tend to get a very good percentile overall because of my performance, strong performance in quant. Now to kind of cut issues like this, also the other case where I'm good in 2 sections but not so good on the other section, my poor performance on my 3rd section may not have that much impact over my overall percentile in this scenario than would have been in the case where there was no across sections normalization. Now, what is done in terms of normalization? Any given percentile value across sections will be assigned the same marks or the overall score. That is what is broadly done, and this is what is our understanding as per what, let's say, kind of a GATE follows or other exams follow, and this is what is the reference that the CAT authorities give in terms of how is the normalization process actually done. Now, the biggest question here that many students have is, would my accuracy affect my overall performance? As far as our understanding goes, the answer is no. It is only the net scores that students get in every section that contribute to the overall normalization process. So how that particular net score has been arrived at. For example, students get a score of 100 with, let's say, 10%, 80% accuracy, and another student gets a score of 100 with, let's say, 70% accuracy. Now, does it mean that the percentiles of these 2 students would be different? They could be different if these 2 students are from 2 different slots, because the difficulty levels of the papers across these slots could possibly give them different percentiles. But then if these students are from the same slot, both of them getting 100 with different levels of accuracies, they would end up at the same percentile, provided there is no across sectional normalization. But then because there is normalization that is being done across sections also, 2 students getting the same net overall score of 100, let's say, could end up at different percentiles because of differences in their section level performances and not because of accuracy. So one big point that you need to kind of take off your mind is the point that you need to focus on accuracy. No, yes, you need to focus on accuracy, definitely. That is to get a better net score, but not keeping normalization in mind, right? That is something that one needs to keep in mind very clearly. However, we may discuss at length about normalization to understand the intricacies. The point that needs to be kept in mind is that the scoring and normalization should not be affecting the way you take the test, or should not be affecting the way you prepare. You need to ensure that you make sure that you prepare on all the areas without neglecting any area. You need to make sure that you focus on giving the best in each of the 60 minutes that are available for each of the sections, and you should not let this affect your test taking strategy. So normalization is only kind of an FYI kind of a discussion right now. You should not let normalization influence your preparation in any way whatsoever. Let's move on to the next slide. Now, this is where we start in terms of how is it that we make sure that we get the best CAT possible. Now, let's start off by asking ourselves a question. How is it that we maximize the score? What is the objective of the CAT exam? The objective of the CAT exam obviously is, as you can see on the first point, as the first point on the slide, to maximize the score. Now, how is it that one can maximize the score? There are only 2 parameters which drive the score. The 2 parameters are the number of attempts that one has made. More the number of attempts, better the net score. But then there is a second parameter which is also there, which comes along with number of attempts to influence the net score, which is accuracy. There is no point in me attempting 100 questions and getting all of them wrong. Obviously, my score would be a very high negative. We should have more number of attempts along with the best possible accuracy. Now, these are the 2 parameters that one needs to keep in mind when one is focusing on maximizing the score. And I'm reiterating here, the only objective that one should have in mind while taking the CAT exam should be to maximize the score. Now, why am I saying this? Why am I stressing on this point that the only objective should be to maximize the score? This is particularly because this CAT pattern is individually timed. The sections are individually timed, which means that within a 60-minute duration that is available for every section, the students only have to focus on maximizing their score in that section. Compared to the case earlier in some other earlier CATs where the students had the entire time available and it is on them to allocate this time across sections. That is when students were obviously in the dilemma in terms of, how much time should I allocate to every section? Am I allocating too much time at the cost of some of the sections, or am I allocating too less time so that I can focus on other sections, eventually affecting this particular section? So all these were kind of questions which one had to tackle while taking the CAT test. Now that question is redundant because the exam itself is determining how much time that the students are going to spend on each of the sections. So therefore, that's a huge worry taken away from our minds, because our focus now would be to utilize the 60 minutes to get the best possible score. And how do I get the best possible score? I go back to my point where I say that we need to focus on the two parameters, which are the number of attempts and accuracy. Now, you may say, I mean, what's so great about it? The point is that everybody knows that, yes, these are the two parameters which influence my score, which is number of attempts and accuracy. But there is a problem with these two parameters. Now, what is the problem with these two parameters? The problem is that these two parameters are not friends. They are kind of contradictory, as you can see on your screen. Why are they contradictory? If I focus on improving my number of attempts, on increasing my number of attempts, then obviously I need to kind of move as fast as possible so that I can do as many questions as possible. And if I move fast, my accuracy could possibly go down, and it's very likely that my accuracy would go down. So which means if I push my number of questions up, number of attempts up, my accuracy sees the other way. And similarly, if I focus on accuracy, which means if I'm extra careful with the question that I'm trying to attempt, I may need to devote additional time to questions that I'm working on. And while doing that, I will lose out on the number of questions that I can eventually attempt. Therefore, if I focus on pushing my accuracy up, my number of questions would go down. So as you can see, these are two parameters which will move in opposite directions. So that's a big puzzle. How do we solve this puzzle? Now we solve this puzzle by focusing on ways in which we can move these two parameters up together. Now, how is it that we do that? That's the question. Now, let me ask you a question. There is already a hint that is there on your screen which says, how do we convert a regular paper into an easy question only paper? Now, why should we do that? So to answer that question, let me first put a question to you for you to think. What or why is it that we call an easy question an easy question? An easy question is called an easy question because it can be answered in as less time as possible, or generally it can be answered quickly in the shortest time possible compared to the tougher questions. And number two, the chances of students going wrong on an easy question is very, very low, which means that my accuracy on easy questions would be high. Now, what does this mean? It means that I'm spending less time per question. If I'm spending less time per question, then my number of attempts overall in a fixed amount of time would go up. So if a paper has easy questions only, then obviously because I'll spend less time per question, my overall number of attempts is bound to go up. And my accuracy is also bound to stay as high as possible because the chance of me going wrong on easy questions is low. So all of us understand, therefore, that an easy question paper is where both these parameters kind of become friends and move up together, the number of attempts and accuracy. But then all of us know that in reality, there is no question paper which is an easy question paper, more so in the case of CAT. So how is it that we convert a regular CAT paper? Now, a regular CAT paper is obviously a mix of easy, medium, and difficult questions. So how is it that we convert a regular CAT paper into an easy question paper? Before I put that question to you, or before we answer that question, let me kind of show you talk about some familiar scenarios. Many of you would have, let's say, after the AIMCAT results are out, once you're going through the questions in the AIMCAT, you would have realized that there are some questions which are very easy and you're not able to attempt them in the exam. You have seen that, but then you're not able to attempt them for whatever reasons. Maybe the way to solve the question didn't strike you, or maybe you misjudged the difficulty level of the paper. Two. But then there is another bigger problem. What is that problem? The bigger problem is that many of you have not seen many of the easy questions that are there in the AIMCAT. Why is that happening? It is happening because the easy questions, which some of them may be there towards the end of the paper or in the second half of the paper, but then many of us may not have reached that place, that point in the paper where we can look at some of the easy questions that are there. Which is why after the AIMCAT is over, when we're looking at the solutions, we find that, I didn't even look at this easy question, look at these easy questions which are there in the paper. That is actually, in a perspective, a much bigger crime. The bigger crime is that of letting an easy question go without even looking at it. Now, why is that happening? That is happening because we are not reaching the end of the paper. Now, therefore, what is it that we need to do? There are two things that we need to kind of do in parallel here. We need to, one, convert the actual paper into an easy question only paper and try and reach the end of the paper as much as possible, right? Now, if we do that, then obviously, as we have just discussed, we would be able to push our number of attempts and the accuracy, both of them, up, thereby maximizing our score and thereby maximizing percentile. Now, if you understand, I've used the word percentile only now. So far, our focus has only been on the score. Now, why is that so? It is so because once, when we're taking the CAT exam, for us, while taking the exam, the competition doesn't exist. Only after we take the exam will then our score be compared with the competition and then a percentile be pulled out of that. So which means percentile is something that will come later on. So as far as preparation goes, as far as taking the test goes, percentile is, so to say, a non-existent term. So focus not much on the percentile, but focus on the score. Percentile is an eventuality. Once you get a score, your score will generate a percentile. So focus more on the score, focus more on maximizing the score. And how do we maximize the score? That is something that we'll discuss now. Now, how is it that we need to approach the 60 minutes of every section? If you notice carefully, the heading says during those 60 minutes. We are not saying during those 180 minutes. Why? That's because, as I said at the beginning, we are taking 3 60-minute exams and not one 180-minute exam. So our focus should always be restricted to how is it that I maximize my score during this 60 minutes. Now, the first thing that one needs to do is to scan the paper. Now, scan the paper for what and how? There are two ways in which one needs to do this. I'll come to that in a moment, but let's first understand what scanning means and why is it that we are scanning. What is it that we are scanning for? We are scanning essentially, one, to get a quick feel of the paper in terms of, let's say, the distribution of questions, how many areas are there in the paper that are there from my areas of comfort, how many questions are there from areas that I'm not that much comfortable with, to get a broad feel. Now, investing a couple of minutes in the scanning would kind of give us a broad idea of in which direction is the difficulty level of the paper going to tend. Is it on the tougher side in terms of area distribution, not much in terms of the concepts or the intricacy of application, etc., etc. So when we do that, quickly by investing a couple of minutes, we'll get a broad idea of the paper. Once we get a broad idea of the paper, we would then like to get a fix in terms of which are the questions or areas from which we'd like to start off attempting the paper. Right? Now, once we do that, then we start picking through. Now, the first couple of steps should not take more than a couple of minutes. Once we start doing that, we need to start picking through the easiest questions in the paper. Now, what does that mean? Essentially, all of this, all of our preparation that we have put in before we take the test boils down to better question selection. The paper, as all of you understand, contains easy questions, moderate questions, and difficult questions. Now, the first level is, which is what is being referred to there on the slide as low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit are the easy questions. But then the problem with easy questions is that no easy question shouts to you saying that, hey, I'm an easy question, answer me. The job is on us. The onus is on us to go judge that this particular question is an easy question and attempt that. So that is what is picking the low-hanging fruit. While saying it may sound easy, obviously it is not very easy to judge the difficulty level of a question and make sure that we attempt it. So that is where we need to ensure that our preparation takes us to that level where we can look at a question and correctly judge the difficulty level of the question. Right? Now, all that is obviously before the exam. Now, with whatever level of preparation that we are in the exam, we need to be able to look at the question and get a basic feel of the difficulty level. How is it that we get that? There are a couple of questions that we need to answer, ask ourselves. The first question is this question from an area that I am comfortable with? Yes, no. If the answer is no, then we ask a second level question. It is not from an area that I'm comfortable with, but is it a basic level question or is it an intricate question or a higher difficulty level question? If it's a basic level question, which is, let's say, some direct application of some basic concepts, then you need to think, you ask yourself, okay, do I know that concept? If yes, then go ahead and answer that. Which is why it is very important not to put in selective preparation, which is what we spoke about at the beginning. You need to ensure that you need to prepare on all the areas as much as possible, and even those areas that you're not that much comfortable with, at least put in a basic level of preparation so that the easier questions from that particular area you're able to deal with. Okay, so that's the second question that we answered here. It's a no, it's not from an area that I'm not comfortable with, and yes, I'm comfortable with this level of difficulty in this particular area, so I've answered it. If it's a yes, the answer to the question in terms of, okay, is this question from an area that I'm comfortable with? If the answer is yes, then we look at a second level question in terms of, is the concept clear, something that I know, something that I can clearly answer? Is the way in which this question is to be approached apparent in the first reading or the second reading? Yes, go ahead and apply that in the question. Right? No, then leave it for later. So essentially, what are we doing? We are trying to put the questions through a much stricter filter in terms of difficulty level judgment before we even attempt the question. What will this ensure? That this will ensure that we don't attempt difficult questions, because difficult questions, obviously by the definition of it, will take a lot of time to solve, and the likelihood of us getting the answer is not also very high. So therefore, we are preventing ourselves from attempting the difficult questions, and also at the same time making sure that we attempt the easy questions. So while doing so, we keep attempting the easy questions, we reach the end of the paper, and then if there is still time left, we do a second pass. Now, what do we do in the second pass? We have picked the low-hanging fruit, we move ourselves up slightly a bit. Now, what does this mean? It means that we raise the difficulty level of the question that we're going to attempt a bit, which means some of the questions that we may have marked for review earlier, we thought we know, but then it may take some time kind of questions. These are the questions that we'll now come back and attempt if there is time left. Now, how is this helping us? This is helping us by making sure that the paper is, one, giving us more accuracy, and is also giving us higher number of attempts. And this is the perfect recipe for score maximization, right? Now, while this is the perfect recipe for score maximization, we need to be very wary in terms of our ability to correctly judge the difficulty level. That obviously is something that we need to keep in mind, because there will be many cases, or there could be cases if you're not careful, where we misjudge the difficulty level of a question. We think it's an attemptable question, we go in and the question turns out to be a difficult question. That is where we end up wasting a lot of time. So in order to prevent ourselves from wasting that time, we need to ensure that we follow what is called a cutoff in terms of, okay, I will not spend more than a certain time on the question, beyond which, however closer the answer may seem, I will jump out of the question and come back to it later once I reach the end of the paper. Now, this discipline is very important to ensure that you don't get stuck on difficult questions, because difficult questions drain out your time, right? So this is how broadly we ensure that during the 60 minutes, we focus on maximizing the score by focusing on the number of attempts and accuracy, both together. Now, you may ask me, okay, whatever you have said so far seems good and easy, but then would there be so many easy questions in the paper for me to crack the CAT? Now, let's look at this. Let's look at this. Before that, let me kind of put a question to you. Is cracking the CAT difficult? And that table that is there in front of you, let's look at that and study that. What have I done here? I have taken the AIMCAT percentiles of 99 percentile, 95 percentile, 90 percentile, and 80 percentile across 4 AIMCATs. AIMCATs 18, 22, 19, 18, and 16. Now, why did I pick these 4 AIMCATs? Because these 4 AIMCATs are broadly at varying levels of difficulty. AIMCAT 19, one of the toughest AIMCATs that we have seen. AIMCAT 18, one of the easiest AIMCATs that we have seen. AIMCAT 22, a moderate level AIMCAT that we have seen, just so that you can understand what are the score levels that are required to, let's say, get a 99 percentile. If you look at this score, now, how did I arrive? Let me spend a minute to explain how I arrived at this table. I looked at, and this information is available for all of you who are taking the AIMCATs. If you, let's say, look at the total number of test takers who took AIMCAT 16, the last AIMCAT that was done, 22,538 students took the AIMCAT, which means 99 percentile would be there at rank 225, right? Because that's 1%. 225 is rank is 99 percentile, rank 225. So I looked at the corresponding score. While rank 225 is not exactly available, 200 is available, 250 is available. So somewhere in between there lies this 225, and the corresponding score I've estimated it to be 141. Similarly, 90 percentile, 10% of 22538 is 2250. So rank 2250, we have 2300 and 2400 available, 2200 and 2300 available. Midway, I took it as 96. So at score 96, or a student who scored 96 would get a 90 percentile in the same AIMCAT. Similarly, 80 percentile, student who scored 77 in AIMCAT 16 would get an 80 percentile. Now, similarly, if you can look at across the AIMCATs, you notice that the 99 percentile score varies from 42% to 53% in the exam. 42% in a very difficult AIMCAT, which is AIMCAT 19, and 53% in an easier AIMCAT, relatively much easier AIMCAT, which is AIMCAT 18. Now, what does that mean to us? What that means to us is that for students to get 99 percentile, the requirement is to get somewhere around 50%. 50% score in the paper would give you 99 percentile. Now, are there many people out there who are not aware of this information? No, I don't think so. Most of you know this information, but then I don't think many of you are putting it to practical use. Now, what do I mean by that? I'll explain that in a moment. Let me first explain the 90 percentile, for example. 90 percentile, students who get anywhere from 27 to 37 percentile, which means let's take the average 35 percentile. 35% is the pass mark in our graduate exam, which means students who can get a pass mark in the exam can get 90 percentile. And let's look at 80 percentile. 80 percentile is varying anywhere from 22 to 29 percentile, which means students who, let's take the midway, let's take 25%. 25%, which is 1/4 of the paper. 100 questions, you do 1/4 of it, 25 questions, you end up at 80 percentile. Now I'm asking a question which you need to ask yourselves. How many of you have crossed 80 percentile consistently? How many of you, if you have not crossed 80 percentile consistently, it means that you have not been able to do 1/4 of the paper. If you have not crossed 90% of the 90 percentile consistently, it means that you have not been able to, in many cases, been able to cross a pass mark, which is 35%. If you have not crossed 95 percentile, what is 95 percentile? Just about anywhere between 35 and 40. What is 99? 99 is somewhere around 50%. 50% is second class performance. If you look at your graduation marks, your BCom, BSc, BTech, 50% is second class. Essentially, what I'm trying to say here is that a second class performance could get you a 99 percentile. A first class performance, obviously much higher, a very high 90s is what you can expect. A very high 99s is what you can expect if you put in a first class performance. For those of you who have not been able to touch 90 or 99 or 95 even for the first time, I want you to ask yourself, what is the kind of number of questions, the kind of net score that I'm getting, because of which I'm not even getting this kind of percentile. Now, this obviously may sound a bit harsh to you, but then I'm just trying to show you the reality in terms of what is the expectation from you in terms of the percent score to get a better percentile. To get an 80 percentile, for those of you who have not touched 80 percentile even once, you can see that a 25% performance, which is 25 questions in the CAT exam, assuming that it's going to be 100 questions this year. Also, a 25 questions, a net score of 25 questions would give you an 80 percentile very, very easily. Now, that is something that you need to really focus on. And there is another additional point. All of us kind of think or tend to think of the CAT exam as being very complicated. It is 100 questions, only 180 minutes, which means less than 2 minutes per question, only 1.8 minutes per question, is what our general perception about the CAT seems to be normally. But then if somebody who is targeting a 99 percentile, if the requirement is only to get a 50% score, which means if I need to answer only 50% of the questions right, 50% of the questions, which means my time would obviously double. 50 questions, 180 minutes, 3.6 minutes per question. If I am targeting 90 percentile, 90 percentile is only asking me to do some 35 questions. If I am targeting 80 percentile, I only need to do some 25 questions, 1/4 of the paper, which means my time per question becomes double to become 7.2 minutes per question. Now, let that sink in your mind for a minute. 7.2 minutes per question from your seemingly very low 1.8 minutes per question. 7.2 minutes per question is a very high number. The point that I'm trying to make you ask yourselves today is that with such a high amount of time per question available, why am I not crossing 80 percentile consistently? Which with 3.6 minutes available per question, why am I not touching 99%? Why did I not touch, or why was I not able to touch 99 percentile even once? And that is because most of us may be looking at the overall deliverable of the CAT exam from an incorrect perspective. That is where I'm trying to come in, trying to tell you that yes, there are many doable questions that are there in the exam, which is what I was talking about in the earlier slide, where I spoke about the fact that you need to focus on solving the easy questions only. From where you will naturally ask me, will there be so many easy questions in the paper which will give me a very good percentile? Now, essentially what I'm trying to say here is that for you to get a 99 percentile, if you do 50 questions, it will be enough. So for you, will there be 50 doable questions in the CAT paper, right? Let's look at that and try and understand this. Now are there so many doable questions, available? Now this is the reference for this is AIMCAT 16. I've taken this distribution, difficulty level distribution from AIMCAT 16. For those of you who are looking at these tables for the first time, these tables will be available in the PDF solutions document that is available across for each of the AIMCATs that you have taken. Obviously, you need to have taken the AIMCAT to view this document. At the end of every section of the solutions, the difficulty level distribution table will be available. Now, as you can see, if you look at the easy and medium questions, section 3, for example, easy and medium, there are many questions. You don't start counting now. We'll go to the next slide where I have a summary of the numbers in terms of how many are easy and medium. Now, what am I calling as doable questions? The doable questions are those questions which are of very easy, and medium level difficulty. Now, how many doable questions are there in this paper? I'm talking about AIMCAT 16 here. If I look at the verbal ability section, there are 9 questions. And there are 21 difficult questions here. So in this paper, the English section is tough. Let's look at the remaining 2 sections. Quantitative ability, 27 doable questions. LR and DI, 16 doable questions. So 27 plus 16, that is 43, plus 9 from English, which is 52. Which means there are 52 doable questions in this paper. Now, by definition, these are easy medium questions. And easy medium questions by definition should not be taking more than 3-4 minutes for you. Which means 52 questions, even if you do, let's say, some 50 questions in that, 53 is 150 minutes is what you should be spending. So even if you take more than 3 minutes for some questions, 180 minutes should be comfortably enough for you to solve only the easy questions. But then, yes, you may have to spend some time to read some difficult questions, discard them, not attempt them, etc., etc. Counting all that also, it should be possible for a well-prepared student. Now, why am I harping about a well-prepared student here? Because a well-prepared student would be able to pick and judge the difficulty level of the questions better, and he can focus on discarding questions, focusing only on discarding the difficult questions and focusing only on the easy questions. So are there many doable questions available? Yes. For example, if I'm somebody who has not crossed 80 percentile even once, now from the pool of 52 easy medium questions that are available in this paper, now can I not pick 25-30 questions? Can I not pick 35-40 questions? I think the answer should be a very, very positive yes from each of you who is serious about preparing for the CAT exam, right? That is something that one needs to focus on. But how is it? Now, all of this is something that we're talking about in terms of what is it that we do in these 60 minutes, in the 3 into 60, 180 minutes of the exam. But then before that or after that, once we have taken the AIMCAT, we need to obviously spend a lot of time analyzing the AIMCAT. Now, AIMCATs are like mirrors. Now, what do mirrors do? Before we go out, when we stand in front of a mirror, the mirror tells us that our hair is off somewhere here, there is some button which is not properly fixed, etc. So we make all those corrections before we go out. We need to utilize the AIMCATs exactly like this. Now, when we look at the AIMCATs, AIMCATs tell us area by area, how is it that we are performing on those areas. For example, AIMCATs tell us that this particular area is your strong area, you're doing well in that area. And it will also, AIMCATs also tell us the quality of question selection. There is a screen where your question judgment is shown. I'll show that screen in a moment. Now this question judgment needs to be, the particular screen will have a button which will show in red. The question will be in red if it's a difficult question and we have attempted it. It will also be in red if it's an easy question and if we have not attempted it, which means not looking at an easy question and attempting a difficult question. Both of these are sins as far as the AIMCATs go and the actual CAT exam goes. So these are something that one needs to avoid. So that particular screen needs to be as green as possible by eliminating these kind of judgment errors. Then how is my time spent in relation with the toppers? Am I taking a lot of time to answer questions which the students have not taken that much time? So time spent analysis, question selection analysis, your accuracy obviously, and for each of the questions, is this question a difficult question, easy question, or a moderate question? The level of difficulty is very clearly indicated. Your time spent and the time spent of students who got this right is indicated, so that you can get a comparison and understand if you have spent a lot of time on this particular question. Okay, now let's quickly look at the screens that are there. Now this is, let's say, once you look at an individual question, this is how the analysis is shown. Let's look at the time spent analysis here. Now obviously this particular student has not answered this question, but for example, if I have answered this question, let's say I've taken 300 minutes for this question, and if the students who have the average time spent by the students is 393, it is, I'm relatively spent less time, and similarly the students who got it right also spent the same time, so which means I have done better than most of the students across the country. However, is my approach the right approach? The thing that many students do is that they analyze the question that they've got wrong, but then they do not analyze the question that they are right. Why is this important? It is important for two reasons. One, sometimes the reason why a particular question is right may be different from the reason why we thought it is right. For example, we have marked option B saying that, okay, option B is the answer for this particular reason, but then option B could be right for an entirely different reason. If you don't do this check, then we would be under the false impression that that particular reason is why this question should be marked answer B. Now that could, a mistake we could put in the exam, actual exam also, which could cost us dearly. So to check if our reasoning thinking is correct, and to check if our approach is the best possible approach. Now we may have done it in 300 minutes because of some approach which has helped us, but then is that the best possible approach? While our time spent is 300 seconds compared to 393, which is the national average, is there a better approach? Which is where we need to look at the solution that is given to understand, because the solutions not only have a straight method, many solutions are also have an alternate method, which means to understand if I have taken the fastest route possible to solve this question is very important. So time spent analysis will help us that way. And also in terms of, let's say, when we get a question wrong, the percent of students who attempted these questions and the percent of students who got this question right in terms of those who attempted would give us a broad indication in terms of the difficulty level of the question, in terms of why is it difficult and how are students faring on a question that is being called difficult. Right. In addition to this analysis, there is also an expert view of how this AIMCAT has to be approached, and whatever I've shown in terms of putting 4 AIMCATs at different percentiles, the table earlier that we have seen, every AIMCAT has a similar table in terms of what is the mark at some important percentile like 99, 95, 90, and 85. Now this is something that each of you have to understand very seriously, and thereby ask yourself the question in terms of why was I not even able to get this kind of a score, so that would obviously push you to do better in the subsequent AIMCATs. Now this is the screen that I was talking about, where each of these buttons needs to be green. For example, by area, for example, here in case the contextual reference and interface, there are 2 questions in red and 1 question in green. Now that is because this 1 question in green has been left out, and the 2 doable questions, which are an easy question here and a moderate question here, both of them have been left out. So this screen is something that should be entirely green, which tells you that you are doing very well in terms of your judgment. right? Now this, which is what the two columns subsequent to that, the judicious in selection and judicious in leaving out, would indicate. So you need to be judicious in leaving out the difficult questions, and you need to be judicious in making sure that you attempt each of the easy questions, right? Now that's all I have to share with you today. So let's now open the session for some questions. And I'm looking at some questions which have come in the session. Somebody by name Ragishri Das has asked a question: is it possible to get 100 percentile by just 3 months of preparation? The focus, Ragishri, I think should not be to get 100 percentile, but the focus should be to get a percentile which is the best possible, which can get you into a top B school. Because 100 percentile, obviously only around 16 students across the country get. But then there are some 10,000 top quality seats in B schools, IIMs and non-IIMs put together, around 4,000 seats in the IIMs and around 6,000 seats in the top 30-40 colleges, right? So now if you look at these schools, you can get in, if you are from a general category, you can get in at a percentile as low as around 92, 93. All of you know that this year there is a student who got into I.I.M. Ahmedabad with 89. Even if you count that as an exception, you can get into a new I.I.M. at around 95, 96. You can get into a newest I.I.M., which is the Visakhapatnam, Amritsar, Bodh Gaya, and that lot. You can get in those I.I.Ms at a much lower percentile if you're from a general category. If you are from an NC-OBC category, you can get into any I.I.M., get into an I.I.M. at as low as around 70, 75 percentile. If you are from an SC category, you can get in at around 65, 70 percentile, and if you are from an ST category, you can get in at around 50, 55 or 50 to 60 percentile. So broadly, your goal should be right. Your goal should not be to get 100 percentile. It should be to get the best possible percentile which can land you at an IIM or a top B school. Let me pick another question. By which date do you recommend we get done with our study material? Aditya, that depends on when you have started. Just to add on to Ragashri's question, I think there's a second part of her question that I've missed answering. Is it possible to get there just by 3 months of preparation? Absolutely, yes. We have year after year seen many students who started somewhere in July, August and have been able to crack the CAT. So it is very much possible, but obviously you need to increase the amount of time that you prepare for CAT every day. Now the second question by Aditya Sinha: which date do you recommend we get done with our material? Now, Aditya, the answer, as I was saying earlier, would depend on when is it that you have started. If you are, let's say, starting now, obviously the next couple of months you would have to prepare with your material. But then if you have somebody who has started a year ago, maybe till about October end, or let's say mid-October, you should be done with almost all your study material, and then you should be taking as many marks as possible in terms of the marks that are there. For example, in time material, we have with time we have 25 AIMCATs, 25 SAMCATs, and another 25 AIMCATs, 25 full-length tests in terms of the online advanced sectional tests. We have sectional tests in each of the 3 areas. So 25 sections, 25 375 sectional tests. So which means another equivalent to 25 full-length tests. So a total of 75 full-length tests would effectively be available to you. So even if you take one AIMCAT per day, one full-length test per day, and spend 3 to 4 hours analyzing that, that will almost make sure that you would spend around 2 months just by analyzing the test. So there's a huge amount of material that is available. So you ensure that you complete your preparation as early as possible, obviously depending on when you have started. Let's look at the next question. Somebody said, did not understand, please explain normalization again. I would say, Siddharth, don't focus much on normalization, because as far as you taking the CAT exam goes, normalization should not even be given a minute of your mind time or mental space. Just delete that, focus on preparing for the exam and giving it in the best possible way. You can read about normalization and get into as much depth as possible on that post the CAT exam. You can separately write to us then, and we will see how to help you. Then Abhishek Bharati has said, but she has left, so left the discussion, so we leave her question. We will look at somebody else's question. What does non-MCQs contain? This is a question from Amit Kumar Bhuyan. Amit, non-MCQs could be in general, based on what we have seen in CAT 2015 and CAT 2016. Non-MCQs could be from the verbal ability area in the English section. They can be from any area in the LRDI section or any topic in the quant section. And essentially the best point in about non-MCQs is that there is no negative marking. However, in let's say an area like verbal ability, non-MCQs are from the paraformation questions, which actually make it very difficult to answer without the options. So just because non-MCQs do not have negative marking, one should not be blindly going for them to attempt. You should obviously try and attempt the paraformation questions if you are good at them, not because they do not have negative marking. So keep that point clearly in your mind. Then how many full-length and sectional tests should one take in a week? As I just explained, this is a question from Sanya Malik, but then she has left, but then I'll still go ahead and answer this question. How many full-length and sectional tests should one take in a week? As I said, 75 sectional tests, effectively full-length tests are available, 75 in number. So you should take as many as possible between in a week between now and the CAT exam, right? Then let me scroll down further. Did wrong non-MCQ questions affect normalized score? Vishesh Gupta, I'll repeat what I said earlier. Accuracy, as far as our understanding and based on what is done in the GATE exam, because that is what the CAT follows, accuracy does not affect normalized score. Your accuracy only affects the your net score, which will in turn affect the normalized score. So accuracy does not have a direct bearing on the normalized score. So don't worry about accuracy. You only worry about score maximization during the exam. How many mock CATs are given to a student before CAT? Again, I said this earlier. This is a question from Arjun Krishna. There are 25 AIMCATs, 25 SAMCATs, and effectively 25 full-length tests via the online sectional test. That's a total of 75. Is it okay to attempt the non-negative questions irrespective of the certainty of the answer? Tushar Chabra has asked this question. If you have obviously spent some time in the question, then yes, please go ahead and attempt the question. Because you have input some time, and if it's right, then you could obviously get lucky. Then we have a question from Alekhya Y, who asks, how many attempts in quant is considered decent? Alekhya, obviously there's no unique answer to this question. This number of attempts would vary depending on the difficulty level of the paper, depending on your ability to, depending on the number of easy questions in the paper, and obviously your ability to spot the easy question. The focus, you should never therefore have a target in your mind in terms of this is the number of questions that I'm going to attempt per question, per section, or overall. Your target should always be or only be to make sure that you don't miss out on any of the easy questions, because once you do that, your number of attempts is obviously going to be much better than otherwise. Then there's a question from Sahil Katyal, who's how many questions to be attempted for 100%, in which 2 to 3 questions wrong in each section. I think I will ignore that because the question is not very clear, Sahil. I'm sorry. If you can repost that question with some bit of clarity. Then we'll look at another question. Nupur Bansal also has a similar question. What is the minimum number of questions that should be attempted in each section? The same answer that I just gave earlier. You should never go with a particular target in mind. Only make sure that you don't miss out on the easy questions. I guess some of you folks have experienced some lack of voice, but not many have seemed to have experienced that. So I'll move to the next question. Okay, Arjun Krishna again asks the question, how much out of 300 should a person be aiming to score 99 percentile in the real CAT? And what is it that this guy should be getting in the AIMCATs ideally? Okay, so just to get a gist of this question, what I think this person, this Arjun Krishna, is asking is, how do AIMCAT percentiles compare to the actual CAT percentiles? Now, AIMCAT percentiles, as you know, AIMCATs are written by serious students, and actual CAT, the number goes much higher, and a lot of non-serious students tend to take the actual CAT exam. Now, because of the non-serious students, those non-serious students join tend to join below the serious students who are better than these non-serious lot. Because of which our percentiles, when I say our percentiles, the AIMCAT takers percentiles get pushed up. Now where is, at which level do these non-serious guys join? They may join at any level, but then a big bunch of them may join below the 50-60 percentile. But when they join there, those of us who take the AIMCATs and are above the 50-60 percentile, we are obviously we can make merry because we get pushed up because of them. And if I am, let's say, getting a consistent 95 plus in my AIMCATs, I can expect percentile in CAT which is as close as possible or more than 99 percentile. If I'm getting a consistent 97, 98, then a very high 99 is very much likely. So obviously your actual CAT percentiles are going to be better, definitely better than the AIMCAT percentiles, provided you are on the 50 plus or 60 plus kind of a percentile. And to what extent will they increase from your AIMCAT percentiles? That will depend on where you are. For example, if you are, let's say, an 80 percentile, your increment could be a lot more than what you would have got if you are at a 98 percentile in the AIMCATs. Right? Let's look at another question. Which is more essential, percentile or raw score? This is a question from Naman Goel. Hey Naman, just don't, as I said earlier, ignore percentile. Percentile doesn't exist for you while you're taking the test. You focus only on maximizing your score, which means your raw score is what you need to focus on, and that is what is going to get translated into the percentile. So let me look at some more questions. Okay, the question is, I wanted to know if AIMCAT level is more than CAT or is it just equivalent to it? There are many times we are unable to understand and attempt some questions. This is a question from Vinny Chaudhary. He has left, but it's a very important question and I'll answer this. AIMCATs try and expose students to difficulty level, to various difficulty levels. Now, there would be some papers which are exactly at the CAT level. There are some papers which are tougher than the CAT, and some papers which are easier than the CAT. Now, why do we do that? We do that because while we know how CAT 16 has been, while we know how CAT 17 and 14 and others before that have been, we do not know how CAT 17 is going to be. The turn that CAT 17 is going to take could be towards a difficult level or towards the easy level is something that we absolutely don't know, which means we need to be prepared to any kind of a turn that the CAT may take. Now, for us to be prepared for any kind of a turn, we need to be exposed to AIMCATs at various levels of difficulty, which is why, as you would have noticed in the percentile table that I have shared with you in one of the earlier slides, the percentile, the scores are across the board. The scores varied from, let's say, 120 to 140 to 160 or 165 for a certain percentile, right? So there we expose you, make sure that you are exposed to different levels of AIMCATs so that the actual CAT just becomes another AIMCAT for you. You have taken so many AIMCATs at various different levels, you feel that the actual CAT also to be an AIMCAT. That way, that is the level of comfort and awareness that the AIMCATs bring to you. Okay, should we scan the paper first for easy questions or should you pass and solve as we move forward? Romil Silot has, I think I got the pronunciation right. This is a student who asked this question. It should be a combination of both, Romil. Essentially what we are saying is you just scan initially only for the first couple of minutes, not more than that. And you pick as you move. You pick an attempt as you move. So it's a combination of both to be done there, Romil. Then let me check for another question. There are some questions which are preparation based, how to prepare, etc., etc. I'm not focusing on those kind of questions because this session is more about how is it that we do in the test and what is it that we make sure that we do after the test while using the AIMCAT analysis so that we can get better. So there are three phases: preparing for the test, taking the test, and after the test analysis. Right now I'm focusing on these two areas and not on the first area. So that is why I'm ignoring any preparation related questions right now. Now there are some additional questions in terms of how many attempts would you call a good attempt, etc., etc. We have discussed that, so I'll ignore that. Okay, there's a very relevant question: how to scan through and know about the question difficulty level in the verbal ability section. This is actually has been phrased in a different way, but the gist of it is that how is it that we do the scanning in VA? Obviously, in verbal ability, reading a question is equal to solving the question, which is not the case in quant, where you read the question, you understand, and then you then solve. These are two different steps in quant, but then it's more or less the same step in verbal ability, which means if I spend time on reading, I'm effectively solving the question. So how is it that I decide which question to attempt? Now here I will bring the focus onto the reading comprehension questions, where we can expect 24 questions, because that has been that's what you have seen in the last two CATs. So when there are 24 questions, now how do we look at these 24 questions? We know that there have been three passages of 6 questions each, and 2 passages of 3 questions each, which means the first focus should be to get the maximum bang out of our buck, and which means maximum out of the time that we invest. So we try and focus on the 6 question sections first. Now within the 3 6 question passages, which one do we attempt? We attempt the one which has a combination of the least possible length, least length, area that we are comfortable with, and readability that is better. Meaning it can be a passage which is from an area that we are comfortable with, but so very dense that we can't really make head or tail out of what is being said. So this is a combination of parameters that we need to use to make a decision in terms of which passage should we attempt. Now we'll just take one last question and we can end here. I'm just trying to scroll down to look at a question that I can pick up. And there are some more questions in terms of we can scan questions in quant and LR, but what should be the strategy for verbal ability? I think I've just answered that also. So let me try and see if I can pick just one question more. Okay, somebody has missed the first 30 minutes. This recording will be available, so you can make sure you can obviously watch this recording for the first 30 minutes again, to ensure that you will see what you have missed. How close are these AIMCATs to the actual exam is another question that we just discussed now. Okay, there's one point on sectional cutoffs. This is a point made by Isha. Sectional cutoffs is something that you don't need to absolutely worry about. I would say practically for you, sectional cutoffs do not exist, because sectional cutoffs were relevant when you had to manage the time. You had to allocate the time between sections. Now that the time per section is being fixed at 60 for everybody, you only need to worry about, I go back to my point earlier, maximizing your score in that 60 minutes. Because if you are able to maximize your score, and with whatever maximized score you have not been able to cross the sectional cutoff, then obviously you're going to miss the sectional cutoff. But while maximizing the score, you will ensure, provided you do it well, you will ensure that you not only cross the sectional cutoff, but also contribute towards a much higher overall score. The other point that needs to be kept in mind is that sectional cutoffs are looked at only by the IIMs and very few top D schools, non-IIM top D schools. So which means sectional cutoffs as a term is completely irrelevant for many students who are, let's say, right now targeting the 80, 85, 90, 95, 90 percentile ranges. Now, which many schools don't even, for the schools that they're going to apply to, which don't even look at sectional cutoffs. So 2 points here. One, sectional cutoffs are absolutely redundant while you're taking the exam, because for every section you need to focus only on score maximization. Second point is that many schools do not even look at sectional cutoffs. It's IIMs, yes, they definitely do look at the sectional cutoffs, and they are as low as 85% time. All right, so we end the seminar here. Thank you very much for joining, and all the best.